Hi everyone, my name is Randa Williams and I'm going to answer the questions submitted to me today about my background in accounting and what I am doing today. There's 14 in total, so here goes. The first question is, did you always know that you wanted to be an accountant? And the answer is absolutely not. I went to college and had no idea what I wanted to do. Took all of my gen ed classes and then decided, okay, let's do business. I knew I wanted to be successful at something, but I didn't know what that was. In business, one of the gen eds was accounting 1, so I took that, fell in love with it, was good at it, and followed through with it, and here I am today. Question number 2. If you were required to major in something different, what would you choose and why? And honestly, I would have to still stay in somewhere in the business field, whether it be business administration or marketing. Finance probably still isn't for me, although I do love the finance side of the business and have spent several years working in financial analyst type roles at Windstream. But definitely more probably marketing. That side of the business is interesting to me, and it's not, I wouldn't completely change career paths. I would never be a teacher. I admire people that are teachers, but that's definitely not something that I am good at and not for me at all. Question number 3. What value do you put on a college graduate pursuing their master's immediately after their bachelor's? And honestly, it just depends on the person. I don't even have my master's, neither a MAC or an MBA, but I did go back after school after I graduated from obtaining my bachelor's degree to get the additional hours that I needed to sit for the CPA exam. For me, in my personal experience, I took all of my senior level accounting courses my senior year of college, and so I knew that if I stayed and went back for my MAC or my master's MBA after I graduated with my accounting degree, that I probably would never want to do accounting again. Not that I didn't love it, I was just really burnt out on school. And so I don't feel not having a master's has hindered me at all in my career. From an accounting perspective, a CPA and having that title is very valuable, and I almost view that as a master's in and of itself. So while it's very valuable for some people, and it's definitely a personal decision of mine, that it's not something that I felt like I needed, and I don't feel, even still today, that it has hindered me in my career progression. Question number 4, what skills could college students learn now to be seen as a stronger candidate for an internship or career after college? And really, it's, especially for an internship, there's not an expectation that you have a lot of experience in the field that you're interning in. So the most important aspects of getting a job is when you're interviewing with somebody, be personable. You're being interviewed not only for your ability to learn, you're also being evaluated of, are you a good fit for this company? Are you a good fit for this team? When I'm interviewing people, I want to make sure that it's not going to rock the boat of the dynamic that I already have in my group. I want to make the team that I already have happy, but I want to have the right person to fill those roles. That will interact well with them, communicate effectively with both them and me, and be a positive attitude and a willingness to learn and cooperate and dig in and learn. And so not necessarily definite skills, but more so an attitude of not one of entitlement. You're here to learn and we're here to help you learn, but to learn and to grow together as a team, I think is very important, in that you have to be able to show in an interview that that's important to you as well, in order for somebody to be like, hey, come work for me, I'm really excited for you to be on my team, is you want to show them your enthusiasm as well. Question number 5. What characteristics do you look for in a resume or candidate for an entry-level position? And really, you're not going to have a lot of experience as an entry-level position. So I'm looking for involvement, whether that is in the community or an existing job. How long have you been there? Is it something that you've done just for a few weeks, or is it relevant to your the job that you're applying for? Also, what's your GPA? So that definitely translates, not all the time, but I'm not going to look for somebody that has a probably C average in accounting classes. That's what we do day in and day out, and so through your not just resume but also the transcript that is likely to be provided for entry-level positions, I look at the accounting classes that are taken, not just your GPA in total. Your GPA could definitely be brought up by other classes outside of accounting, but specific accounting classes associated with what we do, not necessarily cost accounting. I'm in revenue, but I don't do a lot of true cost accounting in production facilities that are used. And so your general accounting 1 and 2 classes, your intermediate 1 and 2, your advanced accounting, how did you do in those? And be ready to explain if you did not do well in one of those classes. Be ready to say why. Life gets in the way. I definitely understand that. So if there's a reason, if something's a fluke, be prepared to speak to that when you go into an interview. Question number 6, what is the biggest mistake you see candidates make during interviews? And I would say that this is probably twofold. Not being engaged is one. I can definitely read, and most people can read, when a candidate is not interested in the conversation at hand. We're interviewing you, you should also be interviewing us. And with that said, don't show up empty-handed to an interview without questions to ask. Whether it's canned questions, show interest in the position, show respect for the person that's interviewing you and the time that they're taking out of their day to ask them questions about whether it's what they like about their job, what's the most difficult thing that they see day in and day out. Be prepared to ask questions. If you're asking questions of somebody that's interviewing you after they're asking you questions for 30 minutes to an hour or however long that takes, and they're not willing to, or they act annoyed to answer those questions, then that's probably not a place that you want to work. If they're not willing to answer questions on the front end to get you in the door, then just think about how that translates into you're learning a job. If I can't answer a question for you now, whether it's I can answer it now or I get an answer to you later, you have to show willingness as a hiring manager, as an employer, to answer the questions of those that are asking you, because inevitably in training you're going to be answering questions day in and day out. Question 7. How difficult was your first year in your career after college, and what were your job responsibilities? It's hard to say. Hindsight is not always 20/20. As your career progresses and your job responsibilities get more difficult, it's all relative. So I would say the most difficult thing that I experienced when I was right out of college is, one, making sure I was creating relationships with the people that I worked with every day. If you don't enjoy the people that you work with and you don't have good relationships with them, then it's not going to be a great place to work, and you probably won't like your job very much. Also, I thought I was awesome at Excel. I put on my resume that I was proficient, and that is very subjective. And so even today, everything that I've learned through being an accountant 1 up until now being a director, I still wouldn't consider myself proficient in Excel because I don't write macros. I definitely know my way around formulas with VLOOKUPs and pivot tables and if-then statements, but there is always somebody that's going to be better than you. So be observant, be ready to learn, and you'll be more likely to be successful in your first year. And going forward, if you're absorbing the information that's given to you and learning from all of those people around you, whether they're somebody that reports to you or has less experience in something, or somebody that has been at the company for 10, 20, 30 years. There's knowledge all around that can be absorbed and gained. And so that was probably my biggest struggle my first year, of who to listen to, what I needed to learn, and there's so much information being thrown at you at once. So take notes and take a step back and realize that no one's expecting you to know everything, and get comfortable with what you know, learn your piece of the pie, and then learn a little bit more, and then learn a little bit more, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Question number 8. How important does a CPA designation play in opportunities for advancement? And I would say that's definitely not a requirement to advance in any aspect of my career. I definitely have people that report to me. I have peers that do not have their CPA that are in accounting, but it plays a very important role, I would say. So that it's definitely something that is a resume booster. If you're going to stay in one company for a long time, it's something that you could definitely overcome. But if you're an accountant and you're looking for positions, I would recommend going out and looking now, even if it's not something that you would qualify for, and look at the bottom of the requisition and see how many say CPA preferred or CPA required. So if something happens and you decide you're going to move and change cities and you need a new job, you're applying for a position that's at a management level, people favor CPAs coming in externally more so than somebody that doesn't have their CPA. It's a specialization. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to get that designation, and it takes a lot of time and effort to maintain it through the CPE that has to be taken every year. So I would say, while it's not a requirement, it's definitely great to have and provides a lot of opportunities in the workplace, especially if you're trying to move up through external sources. Question 9. What was your experience with the CPA exam? I hated it. As I said before, I took extra hours after I graduated. I graduated with 136 hours, well short of the 150 required to sit for the CPA exam. And the rules have changed a little bit in Arkansas, where you can sit, as long as you have the senior level classes that are required, you can sit for the exam without 150 hours, but don't quote me on that. So you probably want to check out the Arkansas State Board of Public Accountancy to get all of those rules. But by the time I got those hours, I was in my second and third year at Windstream, and so that was a very busy time as a company for us. And so I was juggling studying for the CPA exam and sitting for the CPA exam with integration work. This was in 2010 when we acquired 5 separate companies, and I was right in the midst of that. It's a definite learning opportunity for me, but it was a little bit overwhelming, and so I'm not somebody who tests well. I would definitely say I have test anxiety, fear of doing well, or not doing well rather, and so it was not fun, but I found it to be a necessary evil, and it was a definite weight off my shoulders when I passed the CPA exam. Up until that point, it was the biggest highlight of my life, other than marrying my husband, and so yeah, it was kind of awful. And then question number 10 is, how did you prepare for the exam? I used Becker material. Thankfully, through my work, the Becker study materials were covered. Also, we cover reimbursement for the CPA exam as you pass it. So I used that study material and studied literally every day and locked myself in the office in my house. I didn't go anywhere for the weekends. When I had my notice to schedule and I had a date in mind and I had scheduled my test, that's all I focused on. I went to work, I came home, I ate dinner, and I studied until I went to bed, and it was on repeat the next day until it was time for me to sit for the exam. Question number 11. What has been a significant hurdle you've had to overcome in your academic or career so far? And I would say my significant hurdle has been myself. Confidence in myself is not something that comes naturally to me at all. And I also had a struggle with identifying a work-life balance. I wanted to be successful, and I wanted to show everybody here that I was willing to do whatever it took and spend however much time it took to be successful and to meet the goals that I had placed on myself. But that was to the detriment of my personal life, and so it took me a long time to figure out how to find that balance and to realize that no one expected me to spend all of my time up here. There's definitely necessary evils and times that I do need to spend at the office instead of being at home when there's special projects that are going on and deadlines that have to be met. But that doesn't mean all the time. Being here just to be here is not helpful to me or anyone else. And so what I finally figured out to myself and encourage my team is that I don't want to be up here at all hours of the night. I don't want to see my team up here at all hours of the night. So you will be more successful having a process that takes 3 hours and finding a way to make that more efficient. So if you go into a job that works a lot of overtime, great. Take that as a challenge and make things more efficient and get out earlier and show people that you can go in and make things more efficient and make things more cost effective from the time that you're spending there, because that's definitely what gets you places, and at least in my opinion, it's what causes people in my group to notice, make sure I'm noticing them, is that they're making things better, not just for themselves, but for their coworkers, for their staff manager, for me selfishly, and ultimately my boss and the management team and Windstream itself. Question number 12 is, have you had a mentor in your career, and what have you learned from that mentorship? And I would say I've had several. One that was assigned, I was lucky enough to be hired into the Windstream leadership program. That's a rotational program and allowed me to see a lot of different areas of the business. And through that through that program, I was actually assigned a mentor through the program who had been with the company, who was at a higher level. At the time was actually the VP of internal audit and is now the controller of Windstream, and has been for several years, and is now my boss. And so it's still something that has made it easier for me as I move up into different roles, is to realize that VPs, directors, those above you are normal people, so they're willing to help, and you want to work at a company where people are willing to help you. And so I still utilize that relationship outside from him being my boss, is to say, I have a question, as a mentor, I need you to help me with this, to help me through this, to answer these questions of how I deal with either employees or work-life balance, as I said earlier, things like that. But I think the most valuable one, not that that relationship wasn't valuable, are the things that happen organically, the relationships and the mentorships that happen just from striking up a conversation and creating a relationship. And so I'd say the most important one to me has developed into a friendship. It was a person that I worked for 7 years ago. It's my first staff manager when I was in a supervisor role, and she helped me tremendously. I struggled a lot with delegation, knowing when I could tell somebody to do something or that I needed help. I wanted to hold on to everything myself and get it done myself, and if I couldn't do everything, then I felt like a failure. And finally I went to her one day and said, I can't do all of this. And she sat me down and said, Randa, you're a supervisor and you have 3 people that report to you. Do they have the bandwidth to do this? Or are you giving them things to do? And so really just leading me in the direction of not just that, teaching me that I can delegate, but teaching me I learned from her more than anyone else that you have to treat all your employees differently, mostly because you have different personality types. And so I'm a very direct personality. I went straight and to the point. I don't get my feelings hurt. I want feedback, whatever that is. There's not a lot of fluff with me. And so there is with some people. There are some people that before I tell them, hey, I need you to do this, I need to take a minute and say, how are you doing? How's your family? How are things going? And take a minute and find out about them, when I don't necessarily think that that's not necessarily important, but I wouldn't think of that otherwise. Outside of, this is really important, we need to do this now. That doesn't inspire everyone to perform and to act and to get things done. And so she definitely has taught me a lot in that, and we still speak to this day. We have, I would say, are good friends, but I still use her in that mentor relationship because she has a lot more experience in this industry and in a management position than I do. And so as things pop up where I have no idea what I'm doing, I definitely still utilize her and turn to her, and she's more than willing to help me, which is always wonderful. Question 13, and this might be my favorite. What are your thoughts on joining a large CPA firm versus joining a Fortune 500 company straight out of college? I get asked this all the time. When we do recruiting events every year to recruit new college grads, this is the thing that I talk about the most with them and make sure that they are asking me about it. If they don't ask me, I ask them. So obviously my career has been at Windstream. I started here directly out of college. For me, a large CPA firm, public accounting was not an option. I didn't like audit, I didn't like tax. Not that those things aren't important, but I didn't see myself at a company where I am always at a 10,000 feet view, and so that was my view of public accounting. Not necessarily that that's how things always go, but I would say it's very important for you as you're nearing the end of your college education, or as you go through college, or even in your high school, is to look forward in your career. Have a 5-year plan, have a 10-year plan. It may change, it will change, but have an idea of what you want for yourself. If you see yourself spending 2 years in a public accounting firm and then switching over to corporate, whether that be Fortune 500 or a smaller company, I feel like you're wasting your time. 2 years in public accounting doesn't necessarily translate into a senior type or a management type role in a Fortune 500 company, and you're wasting, honestly, a lot of time, effort, and money from the large CPA firms that are grooming you and training you and spending all this time and money to promote you and work you through the ranks, when you know in the back of your mind, I'm going to leave in 2 or 3 years. You can go into being in a CPA firm and change your mind and say, this isn't for me, and that's not a bad thing. And you can go into a Fortune 500 company and decide, this isn't for me either, and I want that public accounting experience. There's definitely valuable lessons that can be learned from either. But if you don't see yourself at a CPA firm long term, I definitely feel like you're not just wasting your time, you're wasting the time of other companies, when you can go directly to a corporate environment and be trained and understand that industry. Telecom is very specialized. I still learn things every day after 10 years here, and so that's definitely my thoughts. And so take it as you will, but don't go into your career thinking, as an accountant, I have to have public accounting experience. You can get similar experience in industry that is just as valuable as going through audits or going through tax of an industry. Not everyone's a technical accountant, so you don't necessarily have to have that experience. It hasn't hindered me, I don't feel, at all in my career at Windstream. I've made it to a director in revenue accounting of a Fortune 500 company without public accounting experience, and I wouldn't, if I had the opportunity to go back and do everything over again, I would still do the exact same thing. I would still not go to public accounting, I would still come to work at Windstream, and I would still be here today. Okay, last question. Thanks for everybody who has listened to me talk this entire time. So question number 14. Are there any final thoughts you have for students that may benefit them as they pursue a career in accounting? I think just everything that I've mentioned up until this point is to be inquisitive. Don't be entitled. There's a lot of hard work that has to be done, and there are a lot of people that are working just as hard, if not harder, than you. Be willing to help. Never say that's not my job, because if it's not your job, you may want that job. So learn what the question is. Help that person, even if it's just directing them to the right person, because who knows, they could be the next person that you have to ask a question. If you're not willing to help them, then not to say that they're not willing to help you, but you're probably going to get a slower response. So create relationships, build on those relationships as you move along. Being nice to people goes a really, really long way. People have to be willing to work with you, and if somebody's not, if you have a bad relationship with somebody, if they're not willing to work with you, if they're not willing to help you, then you can't look at that as, well, that's their problem, because they may be the subject matter expert that you have to talk to at some point down the road. So definitely don't burn bridges. That can be hard sometimes, but if you do, people make mistakes. Go apologize. So never think of yourself too highly. Definitely a lot of things. You're going to learn a lot of things on your way. You're going to learn some things and then come back and think about me telling you this and think, well, that girl's crazy. But that's what's worked for me, at least worked for me so far. So good luck in your potential accounting careers, and I wish you well in life.